And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. Oh, my goodness. What a special guest we have today, Christine Devine. For those of us in Southern California, we know you well as the reporter and anchor on Fox 11 News in Los Angeles here. You've been doing that for, I guess, over 30 years. Incredible, beautiful career. 16-time Emmy winner. You were also the voice and the face behind Wednesday's Child, which started over at Fox. And I believe since 1995, there have been over 500 adoptions, which is really beautiful. And sort of a bit of a full circle because you recently sort of did a little digging and discovered who your dad is, your biological father. So we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about your career. So many people want to know, gosh, how did you start? How did you do all that? So Christine, thanks for joining us. I'm honored.
Hola, oi, Deborah. Como vai você? A little Portuguese for you there.
A little Portuguese, please. I'm in a panic. I'm trying to learn Italian and I can hardly do it. I'm like, oh no. well done. Well done, Christine. First, let's talk to you a little bit because people I know are very curious about you, about your career. Gosh, is this something you always wanted to do?
My parents, my mom, and I say my stepdad, who adopted me when she got married, we'll set that up, probably have to explain it a few times. They were educators, teachers. My dad was a school principal, so education and knowledge and perspective was very, very important to my family. So I thought, how can you always be a student of the world, be a teacher, or be in news?
Yeah, actually, well said. Now, where did you grow up? Because it's quite an interesting story and background. I guess we all have an interesting story and background, but yours is particularly, as it unfolds, you're like, wow. So talk to us where you grew up, would you?
All right. I say I was conceived in Brazil. I was born in a small town in upstate New York. I grew up in Arizona, all over the state. And I lived in Los Angeles longer than anywhere else. So my career has all been largely in Los Angeles, short stint in Texas.
Yeah. Did you grow up on or near a Navajo reservation?
On, yes. So my parents, being educators, took different jobs at different schools. And one job was a principal at Chinle High School, which is in the heart of the Navajo reservation. I probably was fourth, fifth grade then. And for us as kids, it was a great experience because very, very small community, a lot of beautiful canyons to go hike and ruins to go explore and monuments. And my family did all of that.
Yeah, but I know mom and dad were very involved in the community, and mom going way back to being in the Peace Corps.
And my, both. Yeah, both from the So my mother was in the Peace Corps in Brazil, in the favelas. She worked as a health administrator, nurse, so to speak, and did 2 years in Rio. And my father was in Tanzania and Africa in a very remote village as a teacher.
Wow. How did they end up meeting? Obviously, they're the Peace Corps.
But they did. Afterwards, they both got out and decided to become educators in America. And they met at a Peace Corps function in Tucson, Arizona. And the rest is a bit of history.
The rest is definitely history because, you know, when you come from a background where your parents were in the Peace Corps, working in the Peace Corps, working where there's need, that's a whole different situation than mom or dad going into the office and doing investment banking. Do you know what I mean? It clearly had a real impact on you. And as you're growing up, you don't really know that. But as you look back on it, what kind of impact do you think that had on you?
Yeah, I think we are all impacted by the work of our parents and what they do and the example that they set. So for me, I always was raised with a perspective of service. My mother was an exchange student in Panama in high school. Her father, my grandfather, was a Boy Scout leader and a volunteer fireman, as well as a farmer and a businessman. And then you have my, father, who had been in the Peace Corps. Then he was a principal at Job Corps, which is inner city. And my mom was in Teacher Corps, inner city Buffalo. So I was just raised with the idea that the work that you do is to uplift others, especially communities that have been disadvantaged.
Look, you've spent your career doing that. I mean, if anyone who just goes on Google to Google about your work or go on your social media to see all the many, many people you've interviewed, from some of the most notable names in history.
Talking like
Say it again.
Like Rodney King.
Yeah, like Rodney King, and some of the most famous names in history, to some of us who are the local people who are, in need of something. And clearly, what I notice about your work is no matter who you're interviewing, there seems to be an underlying message there of the good work that person is doing. It's a positive way of looking at a story. Do you know what I mean? Do you do that intentionally, or it's just you feel like that's the way to be covering something? Do you know what I'm saying?
I feel like when you work in this business of news, you can interview everybody because everybody has a story. I've tended not really to want to do celebrities or famous people so much as to really want to do voices of the community.
Yeah.
And, you said people who need something. Really, everybody needs something.
Yeah.
When Mayor Bass wants you to come cover her news conference, she needs something. I just believe that there are really great stories out there. I've been fortunate enough to kind of have been pushed into that area of community stories. And as my career grew from being, the low-level reporter and weekend anchor, I came as weekend anchor here. As they gave me these smaller assignments, it kind of became my thing. And as I grew in the career and became the weekday anchor and have been here, 33 years now, my thing got to stay my thing. And so instead of it being a back burner issue or a low interest issue, it really has become a voice for community of the people.
How did Wednesday's Child get started? And for people who don't know, could you tell them what that's about?
Yes. So Wednesday's Child is a segment that deals with DCFS, children in foster care, that small perspective that the judges ruled need to go towards adoption. The goal was not have kids linger forever in the foster care system. First goal is to reunify families, to keep families intact. If it's determined that's not the best route for the child, and we've all heard horrific stories of abuse, neglect, abandonment, then the goal is to find an adoptive home. So we're that small piece of the puzzle in the whole foster care adoption world that deals with that. And really it is, I want to say, very, very specific because you're asking children now to publicly tell their story, publicly say that they're in foster care, and to confront and address and understand, accept, realize, and advocate for themselves. That's a lot to ask a child.
Yeah.
And so all other resources have been exhausted in looking for adoptive homes. It can come to this child. And we usually do large sibling groups of 5. Not everybody can adopt 5 children.
Wow.
But looking for an instant family. We found that special needs or older kids, like we're going to do a teenager who's 17 next week. And 17, you're about to, they say, emancipate. You're about to exit the foster care system and be an adult at 18 or 21, depending on the service you accept. So we're trying to put it out there that this child would like to connect with a family.
Gosh, that's got to be so difficult for that young person, right? Because when he or she goes out into the community, would you say they're basically alone? They don't have family? What's this person's circumstance, for example?
Well, if they've been in foster care, they have been removed from family due to abuse or abandonment. So going back to family, and many of them do, and many of them, parent is parent. There's a love for your mother and father often. And even kids who've been adopted connect with their birth families, I found. But that might not always be, the best route for a child. And so they might have a lack of support. Teachers, classmates, maybe a mentor along the way. But can you imagine being an adult at like 21? Goodbye. Hello, world. Very difficult.
No, I have adult children, and I find that sometimes they need me more than ever. What about this? Or maybe they're in a situation that they need a little advice on or a little help with. When they're little, what do they say? Little children, little problems, and bigger children, not that there's problems, but they need you. And, once a parent, always a parent, regardless of one's age, right? And that, later in your life, talking with your mom and getting to know her better, particularly during her cancer diagnosis and sort of working through that with her. I do want to talk about being adopted, Okay, so you grew up with your mom and dad, and dad had adopted you early on. You have a stepsister that you're very close with. But talk to me about.
Yeah, can I clarify the whole picture real quick?
Oh, please do, because it's not
Yeah.
my story. You know it way better than I do. Go ahead.
It can be a confusing one. So, especially since I work with kids in foster care and adopted kids,
Please.
I was never in foster care.
No.
Yeah. But I clarify because people think, oh, were you? Let me clarify the story. Yeah. So, my mom was a single mother by choice, in that she cut off the relationship with my father before I was born. So that's kind of the podcast we're going to be talking about, I guess, in a bit. But when she married, when I was 2, 3 years old, then the man she married adopted me. So I took his last name, and I'm a legal daughter. I'm not a stepdaughter. I'm actually an adopted daughter. So they have a child. So I have a sister who's a half sister. Then they adopted a Latino boy, and then they long-term fostered Vietnamese refugee children. So that's the family portrait.
What a beautiful family portrait. What was that like growing up for you with so many children in the house? And what was that like?
It can be challenging because my brother came at about 8 years old, and the heartbreak was already in place, having been in foster care and in different foster homes. And, grandmother couldn't keep him. Mother was a heroin addict in jail, so the story goes. So a lot of trauma for him. And then the Vietnamese children came when I was already in college, but their extended family. And why I love the story of that is, as much trauma as we had with my adopted brother, my family still went in, my parents still went back to bring more children into their home.
That's rather extraordinary. Do you want to talk a little bit about your brother and some of his struggles that that happened throughout his life? Because unfortunately, it is a sad ending.
I think he probably was born with substance in his body as an infant, baby. If the mother was an addict, which was the story. The teenager, so imagine the trauma there and how much prenatal care was there. So he did become a drug user himself. He ended up going to Dewey Hall, prison a couple times, and died of a drug overdose. So very painful journey. And really, his storyline helped me to understand so many of the kids in foster care and their birth families and the trauma associated with it. And there's a term we use now in the industry called trauma-informed care, trauma-informed options. So you're not just taking some child and the child's supposed to be grateful to be in your home and everything's wonderful and it's a fantasy. No, these children have been through trauma. And if you welcome a child from foster care into your home, you might want some services or therapy or programs, because you're dealing with a child's needs, not just, it's not Disneyland here.
Yeah. Wow. Growing up, mom always wanted you to be a scientist or an astronaut, right? I love that. My parents would say, you got to be a bookkeeper. I'm like, why? Why do I have to be a bookkeeper, mom, dad? Well, you're good with numbers. But, it didn't happen, right? I was a curious kid, and I imagine you were too, probably a terrific writer. And what was it like when you got into the news business? What was the family thinking about that? Were they proud? Were they excited? Were they just, okay?
I felt fortunate that I always knew what I wanted to do since high school. Took the broadcasting classes that were so limited at that time. And the doors just continued to open. The doors to college opened. I studied broadcast journalism there, did the radio internship, did the TV internship, and then the doors to jobs just seemed to open. So I feel like I wasn't that person who was trying to bust down doors. The doors, tended to open. Now, I always say I wanted to be a ballet dancer too, but I never took the ballet lessons for those doors to open.
Are you a good dancer now?
Well, funny you say that. I think I was born with some rhythm. It did not come from my mother, my German New York mother. It did come from my father, who was a dancer in Brazil. Yeah.
So growing up, I've read that you've said, and you've told me, you said, you look different, right? You had a German mother, very fair skin. You knew you were adopted. But you all would often ask yourself, or people would say to you, who am I? Who are you? What are
What
you?
what are you? That was the
Yeah,
question of my whole life. What are you? And I think this was a time of, I was born in the 60s.
yeah.
So it wasn't a time of acceptance of a lot of diversity, of a lot of mixed race children. You didn't see a lot of that, at least not in my neighborhoods. And so my mother, very fair skin, like milky white skin.
Yeah.
And obviously I have brown skin and wavy hair, not today, but wavy hair. And so people would say, what are you? And I grew up in Arizona. They knew I wasn't Mexican.
Mm.
Figure I was Central American. So what was I? And it took a lot of explaining to do. And I didn't really know. I had to ask my mom, what am I?
And what was her answer?
She said, you're Moreno, which is a common phrase in Latin and Caribbean countries to describe skin tone, brown, Moreno.
Did you keep asking her questions?
Yes.
And what were her answers?
Well, I would get, are you black? Mom, am I black? People, and I was just in a car with somebody this week, and a woman starts speaking rapidly to me in Persian. She thought it was Persian. And I said, I don't understand. And she said, oh, I thought you were Persian. And so I've had that happen a couple of times. I've gone into a Persian grocery store and they start speaking to me in Farsi. So people don't really know.
You have the most beautiful, exotic look. And I can imagine that. I could see Iranian. I could see South and Central America. I can see Africa. I can see India. There's an awful lot going on there. I would not pick German. I'll tell you that right now. German would not be at the top of the list. So you clearly have more of your dad in you. So I imagine you had questions. Here you are in a field where we ask questions daily, but you had questions and a lot of them were unanswered. So talk to me about the journey to finding your birth dad. How did it happen?
All right. So basically I learned early on, it wasn't a discussion the family wanted to have.
Right.
So I think the question would come up with the questions of, what are you? Being that I was like the only one with brown skin in the family until my brother was adopted. So he was 8, I would have been 10. So, and my sister, and who was with my mom and the dad who adopted me, my stepdad, is blonde. So clearly I don't know anybody in the family. So I'm naturally going to have the question, what happened here? Right? Yeah. So I would ask questions and I would get very short answers and very limited conversation. And it kind of taught me as a child, we're not having this conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of being that curious journalist asking a ton of questions, I kind of shut down. Okay, I'm good with it. My life is good. I got food on the table and a home to come home to and parents and good, great. We're all good. Yeah.
But you were taking care of mom some years back. I believe she died the end of 2017 or early 2018.
18, yeah, I had to look that up myself. So again, I would ask a question then as I got older, because the concept of Brazil, which is my mom was in the Peace Corps in Brazil,
Right.
It had a lot for me. You think of Copacabana, girl from Ipanema, Carnival, favelas. It had a very exotic feeling for me. Supermodel Giselle, World Cup soccer, Pele, all the fantasy of Brazil is what I had in my mind.
Right.
So I remember my grandfather, probably college years, I think I'd like to go to Brazil. And I remember this look on his face, dead stopped. You won't like what you find.
Oh.
So again, conversation was shut down.
Yeah. Wait, when was this?
Well, I was in college then.
Okay. Yeah, so you were still young enough. It's not like it was, 8 years ago or something. So you were still pretty young and, just sort of went with what the parents and grandparents had to say. All right, so keep this going. It's really a fascinating story, if you will.
Yeah. So I always knew my father's name and I knew little nuggets about him. And so every now and then I'd look on the computer and look up his name. Nothing popped up at all. Mm-hmm. So
you knew his first and last name. Obviously,
yeah,
you'd have to know his last name. But
I
go
did.
ahead. Okay.
Never pop up, and I thought, oh, maybe third world country back then. His records aren't strong enough to be filtered into the algorithms. Whatever it is, he's not coming up. So I let it go. Live my life as we all do. We're all so busy, right? And then you want me to get right to the story now about the conversation?
I want you to do whatever you want. This is your story and it's fascinating. It's always had me captivated since, word one, but go ahead.
So one day I came home. My mother had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so I would fly home every couple months just to spend some time with her. And she pulls me into her little computer room and pops up Facebook and said, "Here's your father." Yeah. I was like, oh.
Okay. Well, what did you do that moment? What did you say? What was your reaction? I have to know.
I just stared at his picture because I had never seen him before. I just was like this, staring at his picture.
Wow.
And I felt like I saw a lot of me. My mom has a very round face. We both, father and I, have a narrow face. I have these kind of droopy eyes. He's got the same eyes. I have these puffy cheeks. He's got the same cheeks. So I just stared and stared at his picture. Then we power scanned his Facebook postings, and he hadn't posted in 3 years since that date. And so I concluded that he was gone, passed away. Right?
You know what I love? There's a photo on your Instagram, and you say, "They say I look like my paternal grandmother in this." Right? I mean, I read that and I think, because to me, it's very important to know from where you came from, if we're able to, right? We're not all able to know that. Imagine if we could look way back, there's no photos or documents from, centuries ago, but it's so wonderful to be able to know anything. Okay. So you look like pretty much like your paternal grandmother, or so we think. You looked at your father's photo and you thought, oh my gosh, it's staring right back at me. There's my face staring back at me. Did you have any emotions at the time, or was a lot going through your mind, or you just wanted to be respectful of mom and let her take it?
It's like I said, seeing a lot of me. I have very long arms, very lanky, and that's kind of his body build as well. My mom's probably, a couple inches shorter than me. So obviously I didn't really pick up a lot of her build. Grandfather's skinny legs. But anyway, at the family tree.
Beautiful legs. I don't know who they take after, but they're gorgeous. Go ahead.
But kind of hollow out in the middle, and they kind of anyway. It's just kind of a family trait. But anyway, I just literally felt like I saw me for the first time, and that was really cool. Now, because I concluded wrongly that he passed away, because let's just say I concluded then that he passed away. For some reason, I didn't have a great desire for more conversation, which now I wish I could. I kind of was like, okay, thanks. And kind of walked off. Now I wish I'd asked, well, Mom, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? This is the man you had a child with. All these years of not seeing, talking, but I can't ask those questions now.
No.
But back, I'm like, okay, thanks.
But look, gifts she gave you by opening up his Facebook page right there. And then it was, sort of your journey to figure the rest out. That's pretty. So you didn't ask too many questions. Unfortunately, Mom passed away. I know that was very, very difficult. There was a quote that you wrote something. Let me just find it if I can. You wrote this back in February of 2018. When we all think about our mom, I believe you wrote this when you were caring for her, through her cancer. You said, it's the simple things that we share, like a donut or a short phone call. That happens to be so true that when you can no longer talk to that person or see them and have a donut with them, split that donut or call. I used to every morning, I would pick up the phone and say, hi, Mom. And when my mom passed, I still did it. I would pick up the phone and say, hi, Mom, because I couldn't bear the thought of not doing it anymore. It's those little things. So I'm hoping everybody out there who's listening or watching, if you have questions for your family, if you can, try and ask them while you're able, because there's lots of questions I had too that I just sort of went unanswered. But it's very powerful, just what went through you after she passed, and then the journey to finding Dad. So you thought perhaps he had passed away, and you put it to rest, right?
But think about this. Can you
Yeah.
imagine if we thought he was alive and we said, let's try to find him and say hello? I'm dying to know what the conversation would have been between my mother and him. Dying to know. It's funny, I had a therapist say that your mom's still in love with him. Really?
I don't know. There's something in me that feels that. I don't know these people, right? But I'm trying to sort of, I don't know, through osmosis, I'm absorbing this story, and I often wondered that because we don't know, right, Christine? We don't know. But I felt that as well when I'm just reading some of the posts and stories. But we don't know. But maybe.
Here's the thing. I think that because my dad, had died in an accident many years ago. I probably was 28. And so now, I'm in my 50s when this is happening with my mom. And
Yeah.
so my mom had plenty of time to reach out, find this man, look him up. So I don't even know what prompted her to do it, why she did it. I think it was a beautiful gift where it's basically like, she said, here he is. It's now your journey. Have at it if you want. But she was diagnosed with that terminal cancer, so she had 2 years to live. And I feel like she just gave that to me before she died.
Yeah. And by the way, when your dad died of an accident, it was a scuba diving accident, right?
Tragic. So sad.
It is sad when they die of an accident that one is not expecting, right? It's a jolt. So I was sorry to read that as well. And yeah, you were fairly young. You were near, 28, you said. So what was the journey like caring for Mom? Because I know that, you had ups and downs with your mom throughout your life, like many of us have. Yeah. But I believe you really got close to her during that time, didn't you?
We were always close because, when you're a single mother and you're during life and a journey together. Remember, she picked up and moved us out of upstate New York to Tucson, Arizona. So I have this deep sense of me and her.
Yeah.
We had a spiritual kind of connection that my sister and her don't have. And we shared in, her doing Reiki and yoga and so we shared in that kind of stuff. So I kind of felt like it was her and I coming together again. And my sister was a great caretaker as well. So let me just give credit there where it's due.
So when was it that you learned that your dad, your biological dad, was alive? How did that all unfold?
So basically, my mother's friend in the Peace Corps has kind of taken me under her wing, and I had not met her before, but I knew of her because she was the photographer in the group and did these beautiful photos of my mother in the Peace Corps that landed on the cover of the Peace Corps magazine.
Yeah. Are some of those the black and white ones that you?
Yeah.
Woo, stunning. And by the way, you look like a younger version of Mom, which is interesting. I mean, her younger, a little bit in some of those photos anyway, with her hair dark. She got in there somewhere. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So Sally, who I have much deep love and respect for, who's an amazing woman. She's in her late 80s, and she, to this day, travels the globe as an international photographer. She's going to Costa Rica next, and then she's going to Brazil in September to photograph the jaguars. Her last trip was Mongolia. She sends me a picture of her on a camel. And she does these exotic trips all over the world, Japan shooting ice monkeys. And she's
so interesting to interview. Have you ever interviewed her? She sounds incredible.
Yes. So she kind of took me spiritually under her wing. She lives in Baltimore. And she said one day, I see that you have questions about your father. Let's go get answers. I go, it looks like he has a son and a spouse, and they may not know about me. Let's not disrupt them with this news. Let's not rock their world with this news. Ask simple questions like, what kind of ice cream does he like? Does he like ice cream is the question she wanted to ask. I'm like, okay. And she just was really relentless and nonstop and persevering and making a connection. So I owe her everything on this.
So how did it happen? She called him, she wrote to him. What happened?
I said, well, looking at the Facebook page, here are the relatives that I see. Have fun trying to find them. And she found what appeared to be the son and emailed him at work, and he wrote back. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So tell me the rest of the story, because now I know that you've gone to Portugal. You're taking Portuguese lessons because down in Brazil, they speak Portuguese primarily, right? So
Yes.
you're really to prepare yourself for the moment that you meet Dad in person, but you've since spoken, right? Could you tell me about that?
Show you, I have my Portuguese books right here. So I'm taking Portuguese lessons, and I think anybody who will tell you about speaking a language, studying a few words and listening to YouTube is a whole different thing from a rapid conversation.
Oh, tell me. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
So when I'm around Brazilians and they start a conversation, I'm completely lost. Now, I've had 5 years of Spanish in college, so get through some conversations, I can piece together some words, but you start rapidly speaking and it is just, I'm like an alien.
Believe me, I know. Our Thanksgiving tables growing up, it was a whole pile of Italians talking loudly at each other, and I'm just like, I give up. So I understand. Anyway, so continue on. So
You didn't
go
ahead. With all those conversations, you didn't pick up Italian?
Not very well, because I was brought up with, you're American, you're going to speak English. Do you know what I mean? They didn't teach it. I was of that generation where they're like, no, you're going to speak. I mean, I picked it up. I certainly know some words. I can understand it fairly well. I cannot speak it well. I am taking Italian lessons. I'm not the best in the class, but I'm trying. And I'm doing my best, right? I know the curse words. So, those types of things that were very important around our dinner table. But anyway, continue on.
Well, I am surprised my parents didn't really make me learn a language and make me travel, because having my mother been a Panama exchange student in high school, in Brazil in the Peace Corps, and my father in Tanzania, I'm so surprised that I was not forced to learn a language. And why not Portuguese or Spanish for sure? But I guess my mother had completely, when she moved on, she had moved on.
Yeah, and I also think it's part of that generation. Also, they come here, they've moved on, they come here, that's it. They're speaking English, and so are their kids. I don't believe it's like that with younger people, or
Right.
people who are immigrating to the United States. They retain that, they teach their children. I think that's very valuable, because it also makes us a more interesting and accepting society when we do that. But it didn't happen to me, and it didn't happen to you.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So then she got in touch with your brother down there. And then when did you connect with Dad?
Well, I haven't met him yet. And so it was just kind of, WhatsApp is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Google Plate is a wonderful thing. It's just, light getting to know you here a little bit there. And the big thing is going to be when we actually get to meet. I'm grateful that I'm being welcomed by the family with open arms. And that, because a lot of fathers, you think of people who don't know a birth parent, usually a father, that journey of what happened in America, why that father was absentee, or they hate each other, or the parent has moved on, they have another spouse and kids, you're a disruption, don't really want to know you. Or it might be a situation where, is it somebody you actually want to know? People have very difficult lives. So luckily I'm in a place where I think they feel safe with me, and I've done enough research on them that I feel safe with them. It's not like my father is a crime boss in the favela, where I'm like, wow, should I travel there or not?
So you had a phone conversation with him, right, via translator?
Yeah, just one.
Just one. What was his voice like? And how did that go? What did you talk? What did you say? What did he say?
His voice is deep and masculine, throaty, strong, confident, very much in claiming me as a daughter.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That just gave me chills, Christine.
I get to be.
What do you mean by that?
You know, I think that my stepdad couldn't be the dad who made me daddy's little girl because he wasn't my father. My mother probably had some strong protections in place. But also he's not of a family that's overly gushy and gooey and warm. And when you civilians, they're very emotional and emotive, and they talk with their hands, and they're loud and they're energetic, and it's they're loud.
Like my people. Honestly, my husband's Polish and his whole family's from Poland. And when he first went to a dinner with my family, this is true, he was terrified. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. Everyone was talking. I said, but this is just what they do. So I understand that, right? It's a happy moment when everyone's talking like this. So, wow, how incredible. How are you preparing to meet him? And when will you be going to meet him? You don't have to give us all details, but
once I got to go, my father is English, history, and from a Mormon family. And so I think there was a lot of properness and a lot of
wow.
I want to say stoic, very very, and I want to say cold, but proper, very proper.
Yeah.
And so the Brazilians are like, they want to kiss you on both sides of your face, and they want to hug, and they want to touch, you know, they're just so, I don't think I've ever seen the brother not smiling.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Wow. Can you tell me, I saw you not long ago, actually at the Press Club Awards, and we were sitting next to each other. And I said to you, what did he say when he found out what you did? And I loved your answer. What was your answer?
Didn't ask one thing about career or what I did. He asked me, are you happy? Another time he asked me, do you have a lot of friends?
That says a lot, about who he is, because you've been on his mind, I'm certain, much of his life, just hoping that this little girl has gone on with her life to be happy. And gosh, what a gift. When will you be seeing him?
He didn't know anything. He literally was cut off from any conversation, any knowledge, any photos, any history, any insight, any storyline. He knew nothing. And so I think at a point in time, you go on with your life, you let go. This is a time in the 60s where we didn't have the internet and cell phones. And so if, any attempt to reach out is rebuffed or not responded to, where do you go? What do you do? Now, obviously we've had the internet a long time, but, would he know to search for Christine Devine? It's my stepdad.
Interesting. Did your mom have a Facebook page? I guess she did if she found him on Facebook.
But her name would have been Karen Devine.
Yeah, I was just about to say she probably had her married name on there too. Yeah. Wow, and that it's incredible. So you've spoken to him once. When are you planning to go to Brazil to meet him?
Yeah, 2024 is the year. Yeah, I'm going to make that happen. I'm not a big traveler, so it's like a big deal for me to go. I usually have to have, I piggyback off my sister's trips with her family, her husband and child. I'm the fourth. And that I buy the ticket and they plan everything. We're going here, we're staying here, we're eating here, we're doing this tour. Great. I just show up. So traveling for me is like overwhelming. It's a big deal. But I think I'm going to go just soak in the sounds, take in the sights, feel the air on my face and the sun and the ocean, and be the girl from Ipanema and walk on the beach and just see Copacabana. I just want to see it.
Yeah. Do you have any preconceived notions in your head of what you want to do, what you want to say, or you're just going to let it flow? You're going to let it happen?
It's funny because I'm a bit of a planner. So in our business, you don't have a lot of time to waste. And so I'm trying to be going there as a daughter, and I'm going to be very childlike because I don't speak the language. And so the beauty of it is I may be coming as this woman with Emmys and a news career and solid professional in the house, but there I'm going very childlike. Where do I go? Where do I say what I say? What do we do? I don't speak the language. I will look at him like a baby, I think, because I don't understand the thing he's saying for the most part. You know?
Do you think about it at night? Is there anything that you're looking forward to most? Or, you know, because you're
7, 24, I think about it.
24/7, you said.
Mm-hmm.
What goes through your head? I'm just curious, you know why? For those people who are searching for a parent or a loved one and haven't been able to, and you know they must think of it all the time, and you were fortunate enough that that gift your mom gave you just before she passed away, here he is, was enough to set you on this journey to finding dad. So what would you say to people who are looking for their parent or loved one? What would you say to them?
I would say, and this was, I was told too, be open to what you are going to find, because it might not be that fantasy ending. And I've had that with many people.
Right.
An understanding of what that parent has been through that makes them who they are. You know, I work with a lot of foster kids, right, who have stories of trauma. So I told one of the young men that I'm still friendly with, who's now 20s.
Yeah.
And my father, and was telling him the story, and he said, my father tried to kill me.
Ooh.
And I had heard that the first time he met him was in prison. So people have different journeys that might not be, you know, that fantasy ending. So far, mine is looking to be like a really beautiful storyline. Yeah. I know another young man from foster care who found his mother. It turned out to be a very painful, difficult, challenging encounter, and they do not speak. So I feel fortunate. I know others who, you know, the dad left the family, and so there's a lot of pain and anger there, and I don't seem to have that storyline.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems so, for sure. Gosh, we're going to be following this, Christine. Maybe we'll even have you back, because to even, you know, just, I can't imagine. You say you think about it 24/7. Are you up at night just sort of just imagining what it will be like? Or, because that, to me, that's sort of the big unknown, right?
Well, the big thing I really think about, and I go over this like every other day in my head, you know, he's 80 years old now. So I'm getting the phone call that you have a daughter in America who wants to talk to you at 80 years old. I think I just can't, I'm trying to play out that conversation in my head, and I can't wait to actually, what did you say? What did you say? And then what? And then what? I'm excited to really play that out. And I think for him, there's a true gift too, that perhaps he gets a little bit of closure in his life on this.
Absolutely.
And I didn't think about him possibly being heartbroken over never meeting his child, but I'm sensing that he was.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful gift for him as well, and such joy late in life.
And also your interests. You know, you love fashion. I'm not saying that dad would have loved fashion, but, you know, some of your interests, it'll be interesting to see, you know, I know that you enjoy fashion. That's a big part of who you are. You know, you express yourself through fashion. You're always attending Fashion Week, music. You're married to a musician. It'll just be so interesting to see, you know, what you have in common with dad. His legs, right? We're talking about legs, you know, just all those little things that you notice in your parent that you grew up with, and now you'll be able to see. So gosh, I honestly can't wait to hear more about it. Anything else you'd like to tell our audience? Anything about your work, about breaking into your business? We only have a few minutes left, but please take it away.
So the fashion thing was later in life, and that just came from entering kids who were in the arts, and then somehow I fell in the one that was getting pictures taken of, and I started doing it with them, and it's crazy. But this, I'll leave you with this. You'll never guess what kind of work the brother does. The brother in Brazil. Fashion.
I'm afraid to say it, but I'll say it. A writer, a journalist.
Fashion.
What a way to bring that full circle. That's incredible. Have you seen his work?
Yes, yes. He's a stylist of menswear, and I believe he's a designer. He's got his own label with his like initials on the label. Yeah.
Oh, Christine, once again, the hair stood up on my arms. That is amazing. Genetics are so strong. That is really, really, really incredible. Oh, what a beautiful story. Gosh, thanks for joining us, Christine. It was such a delightful conversation. I could talk to you for another hour or two.
Can I
Or more.
one
Go.
thing?
Yeah.
So speaking of fashion, I just want to point out what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a still soccer jersey. Apparently, father is always wearing a soccer jersey. And so I'm going to go down there with my LA Galaxy jersey, my LAFC, my Angel City jersey, and fit right in, but American style.
Are you going to bring him jerseys? He might love that.
I don't know. Do they follow the Rams and the Lakers and Kobe? I don't know.
Well, yes, they do. When we were in Africa and we got to know someone who guided us around for quite some time, he said, please, when you go home, will you send me some jerseys of your best players? It could have been basketball. It could have been soccer. It could have been anything. And we did, because they follow our sports. So that might be a great thing to bring to your dad.
Okay. And I apologize for the doorbell, getting a little home maintenance done here today.
Please, I've got the dog barking, the phone ringing. It happens every time. And Mr. Amazon, he always knows when to come to the door when I'm doing it. So it makes me feel quite at home. Anyway, yeah. Christine Devine, thank you so much for being so open and sharing your story. I'm hoping that someone out there who is looking for their loved one, that might be nervous, that might be scared, listen to your story, because certainly yours seems to be turning out to be, a beautiful, beautiful story. But don't be afraid to look, right? Would you say that? Don't be afraid to start the journey.
And don't be afraid to have answers you might not ever imagine.
Yeah. Gosh, Christine, so much. And please look for Christine Devine weeknights on Fox 11. I believe you do the 10, and you tell.
Yeah, 5 and 10 p.m. Fox 11 News.
Yeah, my favorite news station. I worked there a while ago when I first came to town, Channel 9, Channel 11. And what's amazing is everyone is still friendly. Everyone is respectful. You don't even have to work with somebody for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And you see them and you're like, oh, how's it going? It's a wonderful station and beautiful people there. So Fox 11 News, say hi to all your colleagues there as well for me, will you, when you go to work later?
I will.
Thank you for joining us. And everybody, you can find our interview on all video and audio platforms. We are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then as an audio podcast, we transfer it over. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. So anywhere that you get your podcast, just look up Deborah Kobylt Live and you'll find us. I'm your host, Deborah. Zara Kobylt.